somewhere behind the glamour of Hollywood lies a quieter, more cunning kind of power. A British film studio has spent 4 decades building an empire that most people never notice. Working Title Films is not a household name, but its movies absolutely are. Four Weddings and a Funeral, Notting Hill, Love, Actually, Atonement, Darkest Hour. These films did not just succeed at the box office, they shaped global culture. And they all came from the same two men working out of the same London building. This is the story of how Britain's most powerful studio stayed hidden in plain sight. It is a story about taste, tenacity, and the art of making smart look effortless. Working Title did not buy power. It earned it, one carefully chosen story at a time. In 1983, a young music video producer named Tim Bevan co-founded Working Title Films in London. Bevan had energy, ambition, and an instinct for stories that felt genuinely British. A decade later, Eric Fellner joined as co-chairman, and the studio found its true identity. Bevan and Fellner are famously different men who somehow produce the same extraordinary results. Together, they built a production company with the soul of an indie and the muscle of a major. Their relationship is often described as a marriage. Creative, combative, and deeply productive. What united them was a singular belief that British stories deserved global audiences. They were not chasing Hollywood. They were building an alternative to it on their own terms. And slowly, stubbornly, the world started paying attention. The partnership would eventually produce some of the most beloved films of the past 40 years. In 1994, a low-budget British romantic comedy changed everything for Working Title forever. Four Weddings and a Funeral cost $6 million and grossed over $240 million worldwide. Hollywood had not seen a British film hit like this in a generation. The film proved that wit, warmth, and honest emotion could compete with any blockbuster spectacle. Richard Curtis wrote the screenplay, and it would not be the last time he changed Working Title's fortunes. Four Weddings made Hugh Grant a global star almost overnight, cementing a long creative partnership. Suddenly, every studio in Hollywood wanted to know what Working Title would do next. Bevan and Fellner had proven the formula. Authentic British voice, universal emotional stakes. The earthquake had happened, and the aftershocks would last for the next 3 decades. Working Title was no longer a promising indie. It was a genuine force in world cinema. After Four Weddings, Universal Pictures came knocking with an offer Working Title could not ignore. Universal bought a stake in Working Title, giving it access to global distribution and serious capital. But Bevan and Fellner negotiated something rare: full creative control over their slate of films. They kept the independence that defined their taste while gaining the infrastructure to scale. This arrangement was almost unprecedented in modern Hollywood's history of studio consolidation. Most studios absorb indie companies and quietly erase what made them special in the first place. Working Title did not let that happen, and that resistance became their greatest competitive advantage. They could greenlight films that Universal might never have approved through conventional channels. Smaller, stranger, bolder projects found a home under the Working Title banner because of this deal. The structure was simple and genius. Use the giant's money to tell the little guy's stories. No single collaborator shaped Working Title's golden era more profoundly than writer Richard Curtis. Curtis became the studio's poet laureate of the British romantic comedy in its purest form. Notting Hill arrived in 1999, grossing $360 million on a modest budget. Love Actually in 2003 has since become one of the most rewatched films in television history. Curtis understood that audiences wanted to feel seen, not just entertained, and that distinction mattered. His scripts were filled with embarrassment, longing, and the very specific texture of British social life. Working Title gave Curtis the freedom to be generous with his characters in ways few studios allow. Together, they created a genre shorthand that became one of the most imitated in modern cinema. The Curtis films are often dismissed as light, but their emotional precision is genuinely sophisticated. Working Title knew that comedy with real heart is harder to make than almost anything else, and the numbers proved it. These so-called light films were printing serious money year after year. Working Title was never content to be known only as the home of the British romantic comedy. Beneath the wit and warmth, Bevan and Fellner harbored far more serious artistic ambitions. Atonement in 2007 showed the studio could operate with devastating emotional and cinematic power. The film was nominated for 7 Academy Awards and grossed over $120 million worldwide. The Theory of Everything in 2014 brought them back to the awards conversation with genuine force. Darkest Hour in 2017 won Gary Oldman the Academy Award for Best Actor in one of that decade's great performances. These were not accidental prestige successes. They were the result of deliberate, strategic taste-making. Working Title understood that credibility and commercial success were not opposites. They were partners. By moving between genres with such confidence, they defied every label the industry tried to attach. This range is the truest measure of the studio's power and the depth of its creative vision. There is a fascinating paradox at the center of Working Title's entire commercial and creative strategy. The more specifically British their films felt, the more universally beloved they became worldwide. American studios have long believed that local stories do not travel. Working Title proved them wrong. Audiences in Tokyo and Toronto and Buenos Aires wept at the same awkward British love stories. There is something in the British comic tradition, the self-deprecation, the understatement, that transcends borders. Working Title never Americanized its product to chase a larger market, and that restraint was visionary. They understood that authenticity is the one thing audiences can always detect and always reward. In an industry built on imitation, they built their entire brand on being stubbornly, defiantly themselves. That identity, quietly British, quietly excellent, became their most valuable and most durable asset. Hollywood spent millions trying to replicate the formula and almost always failed to capture the soul. The rise of streaming has brutally disrupted the mid-budget film that Working Title built its legacy upon. Netflix, Amazon, and Apple have made it harder than ever to justify theatrical releases for dramatic films. The movies Working Title makes, thoughtful, character-driven, moderately budgeted, are the most endangered species in cinema. Studios today want franchises, sequels, and superhero spectacles that can anchor billion-dollar universes. Working Title has never built a franchise, and that independence now feels both courageous and precarious. Bevan and Fellner have had to adapt, developing projects with streaming platforms while protecting their identity. The question the industry is quietly asking is whether studios like Working Title can still survive. The answer may depend on whether audiences still hunger for stories that feel genuinely human. Every time a romantic drama or a historical epic connects deeply, Working Title's model is vindicated. The streaming era has changed everything, but it has not yet changed what moves people to tears. Working Title Films has produced over 100 films and collected multiple Academy Awards across 4 decades. It has generated billions in global box office from a company that still operates out of London. No other British independent studio has achieved anything close to this scale or sustained this quality. The secret has always been deceptively simple. Find the best stories and trust the storytellers to tell them. Bevan and Fellner have outlasted trends, mergers, economic crashes, and the complete reinvention of cinema. They built something that Hollywood could not manufacture because they built it with genuine creative conviction. Working Title is proof that you do not have to be the biggest room in the building to matter most. In a culture obsessed with scale, they chose depth, and the world rewarded them enormously for it. The question now is whether the next generation of storytellers will find the same shelter under their banner. Whatever comes next, Working Title has already written its name permanently into cinema history. Not loudly, not brashly, but with the quiet, unshakable confidence of people who always knew they were right,